9:24 a.m. Monday, November 17th, 2025. So a lot of people are beginning to understand that the world might be closer than ever in connection through technology. We are further apart. And as we become more aware of perception and consciousness and the various levels from which our emotions, our thoughts, our sense of identity is tied to, we will continue to recycle. But anyways, recycle through what? The energy system of the universe. Alright, tell me something I don't already know. Well, I think a lot of people understand that the relationship industry, where people are very much driven to live for another person. We know on some level, those who are tuning into this frequency, that this paradigm isn't as sustainable as it once was, and will continue to further erode until there is a balance whereby relationships are not formed because of need for another person, as much as we might feel we need a complementary half. The world is pressuring people harder and harder to wake up from the illusion that the complementary half is not outside of you. Even if they manifest as a person, and whether or not you have a family and children or not. And so I echo these words, these frequencies. And buildings and places like this can become a vortex and they already are in one way, but people don't often see them as places where there can be the expression of something that challenges the fundamental principle that people use to keep the world the way it is. But the influence of other institutions have played its factor, the different ideologies. But what can be said right now? What is another level that is unseen, that once seen can take us closer to the unseen, that helps us then see more choices, pathways, steps that can allow for the unification of our resources and our source. And when people ask you, hey, what's your name? They are in some way looking for the source, as your name has the key to. But oftentimes we forget each other's names, not necessarily because we don't see the nameless name, but because dealing with our current experiences can involve such an energy dynamic that we are constantly filtering out energy and information that does not exactly sustain and cooperate and communicate. We are being drawn to only interact with those who have some will to be challenged and to challenge others. Sometimes not even through speaking or moving or doing, but a lot of times in the West, there is a great force that pressures us to find work, some job, some task or service that not only keeps our physical body alive, but allows us to thrive in a way where there is no difference between our physical body and our light body, our intuitive body, our emotional, our mental body. But getting to that point requires some will in whatever situation we face to up the ante. That helps us transcend this need to look at suffering as a bad thing, to look at what has happened in this universe where there are multiple Earth-like situations not as a bad thing, and the greater forces, which I don't feel the impulse to go into, because there's a certain dynamic where they are not necessarily even greater, because they were like us at a certain point. And when I say they, I understand it suggests a certain form of separation, that we are not all one. But moving into practicality, I'm going to what does hair symbolize? It could be beliefs, knowledge, identity. It could also store the records of thoughts and emotions, but they show a certain frame for what might be would be considered the inner wisdom, which, whether or not people are aware of it or not, it doesn't truly depend on your appearance, your external appearance. But at the same time, what does an external appearance say about the inner wisdom? And this doesn't mean we have to label and judge what our names mean, what our hair means, or whatever our appearance might seem to be like. But anyways, this is the afterlife. This is the multiverse. This is the quantum field. Even if I was blind and my hair was completely over my face, you could still see me if you use this with this. You can be the most blind person in the world and yet see so much more. Not as a competition, but just as a part of willing to play with the principles of life. What does it mean to play? To allow yourself to observe and experience the different polarities, to the certain interpretations of experience. You with yourself, others with you, combined. I'm imagining a blank, not a blank, but a cloth that covers you, so I can't see your appearance. And I am imagining that I am wearing a cloth, that we're going beyond appearances. And as we look at each other without being able to see anything, you can pick whatever color for yours and whatever color for mine. But for me, it doesn't matter the color, but we're wearing something that we cannot see our appearance of. We can hear our voice. But there are some people who cannot speak. But let me stick to something here. As I envision this experience, I imagine a huge energy in the middle of this space, and it is cloaked so we cannot see its appearance by what type of being it is, even though it might be beyond gender, beyond the typical human-like shape with arms and legs. What do we imagine it as? A ball? An orb? I'm not telling you what to imagine it as, but for now, it is reflecting one point of our highest potential for this moment in this day, while helping us remember there is much more that can be experienced than what has so far been experienced on Earth. And what is one point you say to me of our day in which we might be able to express a higher form? And for me, it is going outside the library here in San Francisco, the main library, and handing out my presence. Which includes my presence. 2 different words. I didn't quite articulate verbally the 2 different words, but anyways, what is one point in our day that we can express a deep shift for all to see deeper into itself, its singularity. The voice says, do not upload this video. You've made errors. The longer you go, the less people are going to want to watch or listen or consider you having insights to being able to help them in their practical life get through the kind of very tough camouflaged architecture of the world. But anyways, and the omega to the alpha of my day is to listen to the present, the presence, the precious, innocence of what may be 1,000 visions refined into a few different paths that allows for a broad, exponential influence and effect that then allows others to feel there is a destiny for each individual soul and for each soul of a race, a planet. And when I say there is an evolution for the race, a distinct evolutionary cycle that grants us more choices to other planetary races, interplanetary races, but grounding on Earth through the consciousness, through the challenges, through all the things that are happening. Requires some transparency, some accountability, some will to allow some record, some form to reflect back to others the evolutionary cycle and principle and spirit that draws our situation into a deeper relation that is beyond separation, that is beyond distance or comparison, beyond contrast. Well, the world would say, ah. But anyways, and I get to see myself and my own reaction by looking at myself. It's beautiful. It's like looking in a mirror. It's not quite in sync with the now. But anyways, a mirror is like a hyperverse. You really get to go through many of those parts of our conscience, our psychology, our spirit that might be hard to observe because we have chosen certain choices about who we see ourselves as. And for a long time, many of the states of our society has coalesced into a state due to a poisoned spectrum of identity that perhaps even sees death as a bad thing. Worry and concern. And there are things to take precautions over on an international level, on a domestic level, on a local level, on an interpersonal level. And we try to do the best we can. And I feel like one of the things that society might benefit from are mirrors, facilitated by people who aren't just like armed security guards who are willing to use physical violence. If someone is trying to like vandalize or destroy or pervert it, you can do it in a variety of ways. But is there anything else that I would like to say? What can we imagine? I can imagine certain mirrors here and certain other mirrors, side by side different mirrors in different ways. Maybe it's a building or whatever, and some of the mirrors are just like regular glass mirrors, but the other mirrors are live stream reflections of mirrors of people in other places around the world where you can talk and listen, but to secure the principles, the spirit, the integrity of our sovereignty, there would need to be representatives who have some experience in helping to unify institutions while remove the superiority and inferiority dynamic, which comes in a variety of different forms, with power and money and privilege and pleasure and other things. Cults, even though I'm not going to go into that one. But anyways, stream of consciousness. People streaming consciousness. I also imagine that there can be like virtual reality, little places where people can go into a certain experience, which you don't have to have VR, you can do it through certain projected images through consciousness, which takes a certain will to consistently practice tuning into your meditative neutral being. And I don't even know if meditative is the right word there, but anyways, in these little environments, you can go into various levels of the trials on Earth. Earth, air, fire, and water. Emotions, thoughts, body, identity. But anyways, there's obviously a need to have initiatives and programs where people are getting basic needs. They're getting perhaps emergency spaces where they can sleep, definitely more bathrooms, but a new type of medical aid that isn't just focused on the surface, but also understanding the deep psychological, which does go into multiple lifetimes. And if you add up the lifetimes, you will see there's a certain result. And for each soul it's different, but for a lot of people it is the same in terms of general fear that people have, poison that people have about sharing new ideas that unite the whole and remove those forces that are trying to gray out the lines, blur out the lines, and take a non-choice in all matters and let all matters work out for themselves. Some call that a passive. But anyways, there's more to this equation. Some people think just by doing positive things and focus on the positivity, we will get a better situation. And some people think it's all negative. There's nothing good that could possibly come. But both stem from the gray. And so with that being said, I will let this be what it will be. Enjoy the show, everyone.